The hidden girl. The night was cold, and the ruined colony was silent. Smoke rose slowly from broken buildings. Metal was twisted, glass was shattered, and the streets were empty. But in the shadows, something small was moving. She was not more than 10 years old. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes large and shining like two moons. She was thin, weak, and covered in dirt. Her clothes were torn, and her bare feet were bleeding from sharp stones. She was hungry, so hungry that her small stomach growled like an animal. The little alien girl crawled near a pile of garbage. She sniffed at old food that others had thrown away. She picked up a piece of rotten bread and ate it fast. Her small hands trembled, but she did not stop. She ate like a dog fighting for scraps. To her, even trash was treasure. Around her, humans and other scavengers walked. They carried bags of metal and machines they had stolen from the ruins. They laughed, they shouted, but no one looked at the girl. To them she was nothing, less than nothing. She was just another broken life in a broken world. But one man was watching. He stood at the edge of the street, half hidden in the smoke. He wore dark armor, scratched and dirty from many battles. His helmet was off, and his tired eyes followed the girl. He had seen war, he had seen death, but this was different. This was not an enemy soldier, this was a child. The man's name was Daniel Hale, a human soldier far from home. He had fought in the war that destroyed this colony. He had seen both sides do terrible things. And now, when the war was over, only ruins and survivors remained. He should have left already, but something kept him here. Maybe guilt, maybe hope, he did not know. He watched the girl eat the scraps, and his chest felt heavy. Why was no one helping her? Why was the world blind to her pain? He stepped closer, careful not to scare her, but the girl noticed and froze like a cornered animal. Her big eyes locked on him, wide with fear. Daniel slowly lifted his hand, showing a small piece of bread. It was fresh, not rotten. He crouched down and placed it on the ground, then he stepped back, giving her space. The girl stared at the bread, then at him. Her thin body shook as if her mind was fighting itself. Finally, she crawled forward. Her little fingers reached the bread. She snatched it and ran back into the shadows. But she did not run far. She stayed where she could still see him. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. It was not just hunger in those eyes, it was suspicion, pain, and something more. Daniel sat on a broken stone and waited. He did not chase her. He did not speak. He only sat silent, watching her eat. Minutes passed. The girl ate slowly now, as if afraid the bread might disappear. When she finished, she kept staring at him. She was not used to kindness. In her world, kindness was dangerous. Those who came close always wanted something. So she stayed silent, her lips pressed tight, but Daniel saw something he could not ignore. On her wrist, hidden under dirt and blood, there was a faint mark. It looked like a symbol, a design too perfect to be natural. It glowed softly, just for a second, then faded again. Daniel's heart jumped. He had seen that mark before in secret reports. It was a royal symbol, belonging to the leaders of her people. Could this girl really be more than she seemed? Could she be the last child of a fallen royal family? If so, then she was not only a survivor, she was a target. Every bounty hunter, every soldier, every enemy would want her. And here she was, crawling in garbage, eating scraps, a princess hiding like a beggar. Daniel's jaw tightened. If anyone else saw that mark, she would be taken, sold, used, or killed. He could not let that happen. But he also knew that protecting her would be dangerous. His own people might call him a traitor. The enemy might hunt him forever. And yet, when he looked at her, he did not see an enemy. He saw a child, lost and broken. He saw a girl who deserved more. The girl turned her face away, hiding in the shadows. But before she disappeared, she looked at him once more. Her eyes shone like stars for a brief moment. Daniel felt something stir in his chest, something he thought war had killed long ago. Hope. The ruins were silent again. The scavengers moved on. The smoke drifted into the sky, and in the middle of the broken colony, a bond had started. Fragile, secret, and dangerous. a bond that could change everything. But neither the girl nor the human knew what storms were coming. They did not know that others were already searching for her. Hunters, soldiers, and shadows with cold eyes. For now, she was just the hidden girl. But soon, the galaxy would remember her name. The morning sun rose weakly over the ruins. Light touched the broken walls, the burned metal, the shattered glass. The colony was dead, but life still moved in secret corners. And in one of those corners, the little alien girl was hiding. She crouched inside the hollow of a collapsed building, her knees pulled tight to her chest, her thin arms wrapped around them. Her large eyes blinked slowly, watching the world with quiet fear. She remembered the man from last night, the human who gave her bread. Why did he do that? Humans had only brought her pain. Why would one care? Outside, Daniel Hale walked through the ruins, his boots crushed dust and ash under each step. He carried a small pack of supplies, food, water, even a blanket. He did not know if she would come back, but something inside him told him not to leave. He could not stop thinking about her eyes that carried both fear and hidden strength. When he reached the place where he saw her last, he stopped. He sat down on a piece of stone and placed the bread and water on the ground. Then he waited, silent as the ruins around him. The wind whispered through broken windows, carrying the smell of smoke. For a long time, nothing happened. But then from the shadows, the girl appeared. Her steps were careful, almost soundless. She looked like a ghost of the lost colony, her eyes locked on the food. But her body stayed. Ready to run, Daniel did not move. He kept his hands open, showing he meant no harm. The girl crept closer, grabbed the bread, and stepped back fast. She ate quickly, then drank, spilling some water on her chin. But she did not leave this time. She stayed where he could see her, her eyes never leaving his face. Minutes passed. Neither spoke. It was a silence heavy with memory and fear. But in that silence, something small began to grow. Daniel pulled the blanket from his pack and placed it near her hiding spot. "You will be cold tonight," he said softly. His voice was low, careful, as if speaking too loud might break her. The girl froze. She understood his words, but she refused to answer. Her lips pressed shut, her silence like a shield. Still, she did not run, and that was enough for him. He stayed near, guarding the area. When scavengers walked past, he watched them with hard eyes. When soldiers shouted in the distance, he made sure they kept moving. The girl noticed. She noticed he did not leave. He stayed, like a wall between her and danger. At night, she lay under the blanket, her body shaking less than before. In the dark, she watched the human soldier sitting by a small fire. The light touched his tired face. She wondered why he stayed. What did he want? But even with her fear, she felt something strange. For the first time in many days, maybe weeks, she felt almost safe. The next morning, Daniel tried again. "Do you have a name?" he asked. Gently, the girl looked at him. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came. She shook her head quickly, then hid her face. Her silence was not emptiness. It was protection. Words could betray her. Words could hurt her. So she gave him nothing. Daniel sighed, but did not push. He spoke about small things instead. He told her about the stars he had seen, about the river that once flowed through this colony before the war. He talked not because he expected an answer, but because he wanted her to know his voice carried no anger, no cruelty, only calm. The girl listened, though she pretended not to. Her ears twitched when he spoke of rivers and stars. Her eyes followed his lips, though she tried to look away, and slowly, without knowing it, her silence began to change. It was still a shield, but now it had small cracks. On the third day, Daniel saw the mark on her wrist again. This time the light of dawn made it clear. It was no accident, no dirt or scar, it was a royal symbol. The truth struck him harder now. This child was not only a survivor, she was someone the galaxy would kill to control. He looked at her and felt the weight of choice. If he left her, she would die. If he protected her, he would risk everything. But when she looked back at him, eyes wide and silent, he knew the choice was already made. He could not walk away. The girl curled up in her blanket, her head resting on her knees. She still did not speak. But before she closed her eyes, she looked at him one last time. And in that look was a question, a fragile question she could not say aloud. "Will you stay?" Daniel nodded slightly, though she did not see. "Yes," he whispered to the ruins, "I will stay." The bond between them was still wordless. It was silent, hidden, fragile, but it was real. And in the darkness of the broken colony, that silent bond was stronger than either of them understood. The nights grew colder and the ruins grew quieter. For days, the little alien girl and the human soldier shared the same broken space. She ate the food he gave, drank the water he carried, and slept under the blanket he brought. But she never spoke. Her silence was strong, like armor built from pain. Daniel Hale did not push her. He knew wounds did not heal when forced. So he watched, he waited, and he tried to understand. Every night he thought about the glowing mark on her wrist. It was not something ordinary. It was not a scar, not a burn. It was a royal emblem, a design seen only in hidden files and whispered stories. He remembered long ago, before the war ended, when commanders spoke of an alien royal family. They ruled this colony with wisdom and pride. Their people followed them with loyalty. But when the war came, the family was hunted. Every leader was executed, every heir destroyed, at least that was what the world believed. But now Daniel saw proof with his own eyes. One heir had survived. The little girl, dirty and thin, was no beggar. She was the last spark of a lost throne, the princess of a broken world. At night, when she thought Daniel was sleeping, the girl traced the symbol on her wrist with her finger, her eyes filled with a sadness too deep for her age. She remembered flashes, shadows of fire, the sound of screams, the smell of blood. She remembered hands pulling her away, whispers telling her to hide, and she remembered never seeing her mother's face again. These memories made her silence heavier. Words could not carry such pain, so she kept them locked inside. One evening, Daniel left a small mirror by her blanket. He hoped she would see herself not as a creature of dirt and hunger, but as something more. The girl picked it up slowly. For a moment she saw her reflection. Thin cheeks, messy hair, wide alien eyes. But then the faint symbol glowed again, soft and silver. Her reflection was not only a lost child, it was royalty hidden in shadows. Her small hands trembled and she dropped the mirror. Daniel said nothing, but he saw the truth in her face. She knew who she was. She had always known. Days passed, and Daniel noticed how others began searching the ruins. Groups of armed men, bounty hunters with cruel eyes. They asked questions. They checked every corner. They said they were looking for something valuable. Daniel understood too well. They were hunting her. If they found her, the galaxy would never see her free again. That night, Daniel spoke quietly by the fire. "I know what you are," he said. The girl stiffened. Her breath caught in her throat. Her wide eyes stared at him through the firelight. "You are not just a survivor," Daniel continued. "You carry the blood of kings and queens." The girl shook her head fast, pressing her hands over her ears. But the truth was already burning inside her. Her silence could not hide it anymore. Daniel's voice softened. "I don't care about thrones. I don't care about crowns. I see a child who deserves to live. I see someone the galaxy forgot, but I will not forget." For the first time, her eyes filled with tears in front of him. They slid down her cheeks silently. She turned her face away, but her small shoulders shook. Her silence broke. Not with words, but with the sound of crying. And that sound cut deeper into Daniel than any weapon could. He wanted to promise safety, but he knew danger was close. Already, he had heard whispers of a bounty. Rumors said whoever delivered the last royal heir would be rewarded with power and riches. The galaxy had no mercy for children. If they found her, they would chain her, use her, or kill her. Daniel clenched his fists. He would not let that happen, not while he was breathing. The next morning, He taught her how to move quietly through the ruins, how to hide when strangers passed, how to use shadows as shields. She listened, her silence now mixed with a spark of trust. Her eyes followed his hands. Her steps copied his. Slowly, the bond between them grew stronger. One afternoon, while searching for supplies, they heard footsteps. Daniel pulled her close and hid behind broken metal. Through the cracks, they saw 3 bounty hunters carrying rifles. Their voices were sharp and greedy. "Find the girl," one said. "She's here somewhere." Another growled, "The mark will lead us to a fortune." The girl's body shook with fear. Daniel placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Quiet," he whispered. His eyes promised her he would protect her, and for the first time she believed it. The hunters passed, their voices fading. The girl looked up at Daniel, her lips trembling. For a moment it seemed like she might speak, but then she pressed her mouth shut again. Her silence was not broken yet, but in her eyes Daniel saw it clearly. The wall was cracking. The princess inside was waking. The ruins no longer felt silent. Shadows moved where shadows should not. Every broken wall seemed to hold, listening. Ears, every empty street felt watched. The little alien girl and Daniel Hale lived like ghosts, always hiding, always waiting, always ready to run. The bond between them had grown stronger. She trusted him more now, though she still refused to speak. Her silence was her shield, her only weapon against the world. But her eyes spoke, and Daniel learned to read them. He saw fear, but he also saw something brighter, something fragile, like hope trying to breathe again. Danger came closer each day. Bounty hunters spread through the ruins. Searching in packs, they carried weapons, scanners, and cruel grins. They questioned survivors, they tore apart shelters, and every time they spoke, the same words returned. "Find the girl, the one with the mark. She is worth more than gold." Daniel knew they meant her. If the hunters caught her, her life would end, or worse, be controlled. He could not let that happen. So he became her shadow, her guard, her shield. Every step she took, he watched the corners. Every night she slept, he kept the fire low and his rifle ready. But the girl was not blind to the danger. She felt the weight of every footstep, every whispered threat. Her silence grew heavier. Sometimes she curled up tight, covering her ears as if to block the voices hunting her. But Daniel was always near. He touched her shoulder gently and said, "You are not alone." His words could not erase her fear, but they gave her strength to keep breathing. One night, as they hid in the skeleton of an old factory, Daniel heard boots, the sound of many men. He pulled the girl behind rusted machines. She pressed against him, her small hands gripping his arm. Through the cracks of metal they saw them. 6 hunters, their armor dark, their eyes glowing with scanners. One raised a device that beeped faintly. "She's close," he hissed. "Keep searching," another replied. "Remember, the mark glows under certain light." The girl gasped softly, covering her wrist with both hands. Daniel wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "Quiet," he mouthed. Her wide eyes stared at him, full of fear. But she obeyed. Her body shook, yet no sound escaped her. Minutes crawled by like hours. The hunters passed near their hiding place. One of them stopped, shining a light across the floor. The beam came closer, closer. Daniel held his breath, his finger tight on the trigger of his rifle. The girl buried her face in his chest. Her small heart pounded like thunder. The light lingered, then moved on. At last the hunters walked away, their voices fading into the night. Only when silence returned did Daniel let out a slow breath. The girl looked up at him, her eyes wet with tears. For a moment she opened her mouth as if to speak, but the words died before they reached her lips. Still, Daniel saw what she wanted to say. She wanted to thank him. She wanted to tell him she trusted him. Her silence held more meaning than speech could carry. The next day, Daniel knew they could not stay in the ruins. The hunters were closing in. It was only a matter of time before they found her. He needed to move. He needed to find a way out. But escape was not easy. The colony was surrounded by patrols, human and alien alike, and both wanted her. They traveled. By night, slipping through shadows, Daniel taught her hand signals. When to stop, when to run, when to hide. She learned fast, her silence making her a perfect ghost. But her small frame grew weaker. Hunger gnawed at her body. Daniel gave her the last of his rations, keeping almost nothing for himself. His body ached, but his will was iron. Protecting her was his only mission now. On the fourth night, they reached the edge of the ruins. The girl stopped, her eyes wide. Beyond the rubble stretched a desert of ash and stone, empty, endless, and merciless. If they crossed it, maybe they could find safety. If they failed, they would die under the stars before they stepped out. The girl grabbed his sleeve. Her lips moved, but no sound came. She pointed back toward the ruins. Daniel turned. In the distance, dozens of lights moved. Hunters, soldiers, enemies, an army of shadows. They were searching everywhere now. They were hunting her like wolves hunt prey. Daniel placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "We go forward," he said firmly. "There is no going back." Her eyes filled with fear, but also with something stronger. She nodded, gripping his hand tightly. Together they stepped into the wasteland, leaving the ruins behind. But the hunt had only just begun. Somewhere in the darkness, voices echoed. "She cannot escape. We will find her." The galaxy's eyes were turning toward the little girl, and soon the silent bond she shared with one human would be tested by fire. The desert was endless. Gray sand stretched to the horizon, broken only by black stones and the bones of machines left from the war. The little alien girl walked beside Daniel Hale, her small steps struggling to match his long stride. Her thin body trembled with exhaustion, but she did not complain. Her silence was stronger than her hunger. Still, her eyes betrayed her weakness, and Daniel saw it every time she stumbled. He carried her when she could not walk. He gave her water, though his own throat burned dry, and at night, under the pale stars, he watched the horizon for movement. The hunters were behind them, and the desert gave no place to hide. But Daniel kept moving, driven by a promise he never spoke aloud. He would not abandon her, no matter the cost. After 3 days, they reached a ruined outpost. Rusting walls, broken towers, and a handful of survivors lived there. Daniel thought they might rest, gather supplies, and move again. But danger followed them, even here. The moment they entered, eyes turned to the girl. Suspicious eyes, greedy eyes. People whispered to one another, their words sharp and eager. "They say a royal child survived. Bounty hunters are offering mountains of credits. Maybe this is her." Daniel kept the girl close. She stayed behind him, clutching his sleeve, her eyes wide with fear. He lowered his voice. "Stay near me. Don't let go." She nodded, her silence heavy. For a short time, they found shelter in an abandoned room. Daniel thought maybe they had a chance to leave quietly before anyone acted. But he was wrong. That night, soldiers came. Not hunters, not strangers, but humans wearing the same insignia Daniel once wore. His own people. They stormed the room, rifles raised. Daniel pushed the girl behind him, his weapon drawn. "What do you want?" he demanded. The leader stepped forward, his face hard. "You know what we want, Hale. That thing you're hiding, it's worth more than your life." Daniel's chest tightened. "She's not a thing," he growled. "She's a child." The soldier sneered. "She's a key, Hale. Do you know how much her blood is worth? With her symbol, governments will bow, armies will rise." The girl shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. Her small hands gripped Daniel's sleeve tighter. She could not speak, but her terror was loud. Daniel raised his weapon higher, his voice low and sharp. "Over my dead body." The soldiers moved fast. They overpowered him, striking his head and wrenching the rifle away. He fought with fists and fury, but they were too many. They dragged him to the ground, chains locking around his wrists. The girl screamed without sound, her mouth open, her eyes wide. She reached for him, but rough hands pulled her back. The last thing Daniel saw before darkness swallowed him was her face. Her tears fell like stars, her lips moved, shaping a single word. His name. It was the first word she had spoken since he met her. Soft, broken, but real. Daniel. When he woke, he was in a cage, His body ached, blood dried on his skin. The outpost commander stood outside, his expression calm but cold. "You had a choice, Hale," he said. "You could have been rich, you could have walked away free, but instead you protected her." Daniel forced himself up, his hands gripping the bars. "Where is she?" he demanded. The commander smiled faintly. "She's safe for now. In our custody, where she belongs. Soon she will be delivered to the highest bidder." Daniel's heart burned with rage. He slammed the bars, his voice shaking with fury. "You're selling a child." The commander's eyes narrowed. "She is not just a child, she is a weapon, a throne, a crown. And you, Hale, you're a fool blinded by pity." From the corner of the room, a small sound broke the silence. The girl stood there, her wrists bound, her face pale. Her eyes met Daniel's, and for the first time her silence shattered. Her lips moved again, her voice trembling but clear. "Don't leave me." Daniel's breath caught. The weight of her trust crushed him and lifted him at the same time. She had given him her first words, her plea, her bond, and he swore in his heart he would not fail her. The commander ordered the guards to take her away. Daniel's chains rattled as he fought, but the metal held strong. The girl was dragged through the door, her eyes locked on his until the last second. Then she was gone, swallowed by the darkness of the outpost, alone in the cage. Daniel pressed his forehead against the bars. The words she spoke still echoed inside him. "Don't leave me." And he whispered back, his voice steady with promise. "I won't." The betrayal was complete. His own people had taken her. But Daniel Hale was not finished. He would break chains, walls, and armies if he had to, because the bond between them was stronger than betrayal and stronger than fear. The cage was dark and cold. Chains cut into Daniel Hale's wrists. His body ached from bruises. His head rang with pain, but none of that mattered. The only thing that filled his mind was her voice, the little alien girl's trembling words. "Don't leave me." Those words gave him fire. They burned hotter than pain, stronger than chains. He pressed his forehead to the metal bars, whispering back, "I won't." It was not only a promise, it was his reason to keep breathing. Outside the cage, the outpost was alive with greed. Men moved through the halls carrying weapons and supplies. They spoke of the package. They laughed about the fortune she would bring. Every word made Daniel's fists clench tighter. They saw her as a prize, a tool, a crown. But to him, she was a child, a life worth more than any empire. At night, when the guards grew lazy, Daniel tested the cage. The bars were old, rusted from years of neglect. They groaned when he pushed them. The chains on his wrists were strong, but his will was stronger. He pulled until his skin tore, until blood ran. Pain was nothing. Every drop reminded him of the girl waiting in fear. Hours passed, and finally, one bar bent. He pushed harder, muscles screaming, until there was space to slip through. He dragged himself free, silent as shadow. His wrists bled, but freedom was worth the price. The outpost was dim, lit by weak lanterns. Daniel moved through the halls like a ghost. He stole a knife from a sleeping guard. He pressed his ear to doors, searching, listening. Then he heard her voice, faint and broken, crying. She was close. He found the room. 2 guards stood outside, laughing softly. Daniel crept up behind them. His knife struck quick and quiet. The men fell, their laughter dying in silence. Inside, the girl sat on a bed, her wrists bound, her eyes red from tears. When she saw him, she froze. For a moment, she did not believe. But then her eyes widened, and hope lit her face. "Daniel," she whispered. The sound of her voice gave him strength like steel. He cut her bonds and pulled her close. "I told you," he said, his voice low but steady. "I won't leave you." She clung to him, her small arms tight around his neck. Her silence had broken now, but her words were few. She did not need many. The bond between them spoke louder than speech. They slipped into the halls, moving like shadows. But the escape was not silent for long. A guard found the bodies outside her room. The alarm rang through the outpost, sharp and loud. Lights flashed red, boots thundered, voices shouted. "They're escaping. Find the soldier. Find the girl." Daniel grabbed a rifle from a fallen guard. "Stay close to me," he told her. She nodded, gripping his sleeve, her eyes wide but fierce. For the first time, she did not look like prey. She looked like someone ready to fight for her life. They ran through the outpost. Bullets striking walls around them, Daniel fired back, sharp and precise. He moved fast, shielding her with his body. Every step was a battle, but every step brought them closer to freedom. At the main gate, soldiers blocked the path. Too many, too armed. Daniel's heart raced, but he did not stop. He pushed her behind cover and prepared to fight. But then something strange happened. The symbol on her wrist glowed. Soft silver light filled the air. The soldiers froze, their weapons shaking, whispers spread among them. "It's her, the royal heir. She's alive." The glow grew brighter. The girl stared at her wrist in shock. She did not understand the power, but it answered. Her fear, Daniel pulled her hand down gently. "We'll figure it out later," he whispered. "Right now, we run." Gunfire erupted again. Daniel carried her through the gate, blasting their way into the night. Behind them, alarms screamed. Soldiers shouted. The outpost burned with chaos, but ahead was open desert and dark sky. Freedom. At least for now, they ran until their legs gave out. Finally, they collapsed behind a ridge of stone. Breathing hard, Daniel looked at her. Her face was pale, her eyes still glowing faintly. "You're more than they say," he told her. "You're not a weapon, you're not a prize. You're a person and you will live." The girl reached for his hand, her small fingers gripping tightly. Her lips moved, and her voice came soft but certain. "Don't leave." Daniel squeezed her hand, his voice firm. "Never." The desert was wide, the hunters were close, the galaxy was against them, but they were free, together, and together they would fight. The escape was not the end. It was only the beginning. The desert stretched endless before them. Behind them, the outpost still burned, soldiers searching, hunters gathering like wolves. Ahead, nothing but sand, stone, and a horizon painted in pale light. Daniel Hale and the little alien girl moved slowly, each step heavy with exhaustion. But they were free, and freedom was enough to keep them walking. The girl stayed close to him, her small hand gripping his sleeve. Her silence had begun to break, her voice fragile but real. She had spoken his name. She had begged him not to leave. Now, when she looked at him, her eyes held more than fear. They held trust, and something brighter, something like hope. But danger pressed closer with every hour. Rumors spread faster than fire. The royal heir lived. The last princess had survived, and now the galaxy wanted her. Some wanted to kill her, some wanted to control her. All of them would stop at nothing. Daniel knew they could not run forever. He needed to make a choice. If he tried to hide her, they would always be hunted. If he gave her up, she would be lost, used, broken. But if he fought for her, he would fight against armies, against empires, against his own kind. The choice was impossible, yet it was already made in his heart. That night they found shelter inside the wreck of an old ship. Its broken walls kept out the wind, its shadows hid their fire. The girl curled up beside him, her head against his chest. She whispered one word before sleep claimed her. Safe. Daniel's heart tightened. He knew she was not safe, not yet, but he swore he would make it true. As she slept, he studied the mark on her wrist. The symbol glowed faintly in the dark. He remembered the soldiers whispering, the hunters shouting. This symbol was not only her curse, it was her crown. It meant power, armies, nations. But Daniel saw something else. He saw a child who deserved a chance to live, not as a prize, not as a weapon, but as herself. At dawn, the hunters came. Engines roared. Sand lifted in clouds. Voices echoed across the desert. They're here. Find them. Daniel woke the girl, his voice steady but urgent. "It's time," he said. She looked at him with wide eyes, fear and trust battling inside her. "Stay close no matter what." The wreck became a battlefield. Bullets tore through metal, fire lit the air. Daniel fought with everything he had, his rifle blazing, his body a shield. The girl hid behind him, trembling. But then the mark on her wrist flared bright. The light spread, filling the wreck with silver fire. The hunters froze, blinded by the glow. Some fell to their knees, whispering in awe. The heir, the princess, she lives. The girl stared at her glowing wrist. Her small body shook, but her eyes grew fierce. She stepped out from behind Daniel, her voice soft but strong. "Stop." The hunters hesitated, caught between greed and fear. Daniel looked at her, his chest filled with pride. She was no longer just a hidden girl. She was standing like something greater, something untouchable. But the glow faded, and with it, the hunters regained their hunger. They raised their weapons again. Daniel pulled her back, shouting, "Run!" They escaped into the desert once more, but the hunters followed, engines howling, guns firing. The end felt close, the choice pressing harder than ever. Daniel stopped at the edge of a canyon, the girl at his side. The drop below was deep, the path ahead blocked. The hunters closed in, their voices cruel. "Hand her over, Hale." "You can't win." Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle, his eyes burned with defiance. "I don't need to win," he said. "I only need to keep her free." The girl tugged his sleeve, her eyes wet with tears. "Daniel," she whispered. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "You stay. You fight. Me too." Her courage struck him like lightning. She was not asking to be hidden anymore. She was asking to stand, to fight, to live. The hunters advanced, the canyon wind howled. Daniel looked at her and made his choice. Not for thrones, not for crowns, but for her. For the child who once ate scraps like a dog. For the princess who now stood like fire. He raised his weapon, standing tall beside her. "If you want her," he shouted to the hunters, "you'll have to go through me." The girl raised her glowing wrist, light spilling across the canyon. Together they faced the storm. Together they chose. The battle that followed would echo across the stars. Not because of soldiers, not because of crowns, but because one human saw more than a weapon. He saw a princess, and because of him, she would never be forgotten.